Let's jump into the first one. Well,
Yeah.
I have not, full disclosure for everybody here as well, I have not looked at these decks. I try to look at them cold
Great.
and recreate what an investor says.
Yep.
So first we've got Crates, and this is from Sharif. And here's the title page. Crates, I'll read it. Health, automated savings platform unlocking billions in unrealized health, wellness savings. And then we got a little quote here. Millennials staying healthy, working PE. Crates completely transformed the way I use my HSA, saving $1,000 plus a year on my gym. Whoop. And supplements so easy to. Not sure if this testimonial, but Will, what's your first impression about this cover slide?
First things first. Who is this? Is this the founder that's there? That's a quote from somebody.
I don't know.
We don't know.
That's
Okay.
the question.
Okay, fair enough. First things first. Whoever did submit the deck, thanks. Right. To be fair, a whole bunch of people are going to see this. It's going to help a whole bunch of people out. It's brave for you to do it. Maybe selfishly, you just needed the help, and that's cool too. But I'm saying this message to all the other founders that submit a deck. It's a cool thing to do, right? It's appreciated, right? You submitting a deck, it's kind of putting yourself out there naked a little bit, but it is helping out a lot of other people, and we appreciate the fact that you do it. So I want to put that out there. First things first, having the tagline out there helps a ton. You got to remember, there are a lot of decks getting sent out there, and this is your first impression, but keep it simple. Putting that quote out there, the first thing, not the end of the world, but bear in mind, the person seeing this now, right now, Ed and I, and for all the folks listening to this, remember, we have no context. Think about yourself, all the folks watching this. At this very moment, you have no context for what this business is, and now the founders just introduced a testimonial, a quote, and you don't have the full context for what the business is. So the quote doesn't necessarily ring true yet. It's a little bit early to give the quote because you don't fully understand what the value of that quote is because you don't have the context of the business. As founders, this happens all the time because we forget, because we've been thinking about this nonstop. We forget that our audience, the investors, et cetera, don't know the business the way we do. And this is going to permeate the entire deck. It happens throughout the whole deck. We miss all of these details throughout the deck that we forget to tell our audience because we already know them. And it happens over and over and over. And this is why you share your deck. You share it with strangers. You share it with fresh faces. You share it with people who've never seen it before because you'll see it on their face. You're like, and this is why it's awesome. And the person sitting across from you is like, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? And you're like, wow, now that you say that, that makes total sense. So my first point, it's simple. It's so obvious, when you hear it, is share it with strangers. It makes a huge lick of difference.
And right off the bat, as what Will said, you got your opportunity to make the first impression. And the first impression, I'm going to look at it and go, okay, well, it's design. There's a logo. I can appreciate these things. It's professional. It's put together. But I'm either going to completely ignore that testimonial because it's irrelevant to me at that moment in time, and I don't have time. I literally have a few seconds that I'm going to be spending on this, or I'm going to read it and I'm going to be confused. And that's not situation. Like, they say in professional fighting, don't leave it in the hands of the judges. Like, don't leave it in the minds of the investor to have to make this decision. But overall, I'm going to say, Will, I don't know what you think, but yeah, at least I know the direction that I'm heading, and I appreciate a tagline like this, right?
Yep.
So let's move into the next one. Oh, I saw a comment here. We got some regulars that are checking it out. And yeah, so if you want us to look at your pitch deck right now, let's do it right after. You didn't have to submit it beforehand. We usually have them loaded, ready for the show, but we will take a look at your pitch deck. So very courageous of you to put your pitch deck right in there. But let's take a look. Let's speed through this one then. We got HSAs equal most underutilized asset in health and personal finance. And then we got some facts, 35 million, billions, 3%. Will right away. This is the problem slide. At least it says problem in the upper right-hand corner from what I can see. What do you think about this?
Okay, so here's the challenge. I don't know where the focus should be. This happens all the time. Essentially, what's happening right now is you've given me 3, maybe 4 different things to focus on. You just told me 35 million HSA account holders. You just told me billions of dollars on unrealized savings. And you just told me 3% of account holders. You just gave me 3 different thought paths. That's dangerous. Now, often when we're building the problem statement, we're thinking, well, more is better, right? Unfortunately, more is bad. All 3 of those paths confuse me because I don't know which one you want me to be on. But what we're looking for is singularity. We want focus. Focus me on a single problem, a single path. Here's exactly where I want you to take me. I want you to open up with the exact person you're trying to focus on. In other words, I want you to say US consumers. I want you to say millennials. I want you to say moms. I want you to say exactly who you're opening up with. Ed, when you look at this, can you tell me, or does it resonate, who the customer is?
You presented multiple options. So right away, I don't know, are you trying to solve the problem for HSAs? First, I'm going to back up here. I don't know if this is an American thing, me being Canadian, please. We'll do better next time. I definitely will try. But what is an HSA? Is that actually a common term that every American investor, anybody would know?
I was going to go there next. Okay. This is exactly what I was just talking about in the previous slide. The founder assumes that everyone knows what a health savings account is.
Gotcha.
Right? Now, this is because it's common to them. This happens all the time. But think about it. Ed, you're a smart guy that looks at pitch decks for a living, and you didn't instantly know what it is.
No idea.
Think about that for a moment. Think of what a massive miss that is for the founder, sending it to a highly educated person that does this for a living, and how quickly that missed right out of the gates. Now, for the entire rest of the deck, you're not on the same page. That person lost you by simply using the wrong terminology out of the gates. Time and time again, if you had to make a bet, you want to bet on the lowest common denominator terminology. You want to speak to your audience like they're 12 years old. Now, when people hear that, they're like, well, I don't want to sound pedestrian. I don't want to sound childish. That's not it. That is not it. You want to make sure you're speaking a common language that is just so simple to understand. I'll give you a good example where I saw this go haywire across the board. Crypto was the worst example of this. Ed, I'm sure you saw it a lot. Crypto
and I
went
invested
over
in a lot of crypto, let me tell you.
over everyone's head in the first 5 words, like immediate jargon. And like, I never got that into crypto, but I knew some of it. And I was like, what the hell are they talking about? Right. Not to mention, most of it made no sense to begin with. And I was like, no one understands what you're talking about. And so when we would look at the problem statement, the first thing we would say is it simple? Is it simple? And whenever you're using a term that's industry jargon, whenever you're using something that only somebody that knows it would know it, it fails. Let's go back to the slide, the problem slide. Problem statement slide is the single most important slide on the deck. It sets up the entire deck, Ed, when you look at the problem statement slide here, what problem do you take from it?
That's the next issue. So first, I'm like, what's an HSA? So
Okay.
let's just say I knew what an HSA was.
Sure.
Now, I don't know if the problem that I'm trying to take away is that HSAs are broken unto themselves. The people don't know how to use the HSAs, or if there's a bigger economic problem. The companies that participate in the HSAs, I'm all over the map, and that's what you said. You give me 3 paths to go down, and I'm completely confused.
You bet. Okay, so we're missing a couple of key fundamentals in the problem statement. The first thing that we didn't strictly pay attention to was who has the problem. Now technically, we said 35 million account holders. So we're somewhere in there. Okay, that's not too far off. Okay. We said that they've got billions of dollars in unrealized savings. Now that's actually the core of the problem. I bet when we get to the solution statement, that's what we're going to talk about, that there's some unrealized savings that can be tapped into, and we can do something of that. Because then we say 3% of account holders, only 3% of account holders understand the full benefits. So if I had to guess, and by the way, in the problem statement, you kind of don't want me to guess. A really good problem statement makes me go, oh, damn, I think I know exactly what the solution is, because it sets me up so well.
Yeah.
A confusing problem statement is like, damn, dude, I don't even think I understand what this problem means. And it, again, happens all the time. Not a big deal.
Let's trace back. So let's explore a little bit. I just want to caveat this, and a little public service announcement for everyone. No investor is going to spend all this time on this pitch deck like Will just did. We are not going to spend that time. It's like done. Next. We're doing this to help you. So don't take for granted that an investor does this. But for the sake of understanding and learning, let's look at this and let's trace back and see if we can make some connections or refine this just a little bit. Here's another problem slide. We'll talk about some founders send us and they got 3 problem slides. Like, what would you say to that?
You get 1. Here's the deal. We get 1 problem slide, and at most, we're allowed to have 2 sentences. Now, when people hear that, they hear, wait, whoa, I get 2 sentences. What are you talking about? Who says I only get 2 sentences? Here's why. Here's why you only get 2 sentences. And Ed, you were just talking about this. You get 2 sentences because that is the maximum amount of attention that your slide is going to get. Here's what I think people think when they're building the deck. Again, Ed, you and I have gone through this as founders ourselves, so we had all the same kind of misconceptions of how this process goes. When we build our deck, we kind of assume that it's kind of like when we submitted a term paper to our professor, that it gets read and consumed and gets its due attention. It does not. It gets shuffled as fast as possible in a highly competitive way. So the way it gets consumed is I get 20 decks as an investor. I rifle through them as fast as possible. And if they're even a little bit off, I just cycle through to the ones that are not off. So if you're the one that's all jumbled with a bunch of slides that make no sense, I just don't need to read it. I don't sit there and give you the benefit of the doubt because I'm paid to grade your paper. It's not a mortgage application. I don't have to spend time on it. I can just move on to the one that's not a jumbled mess, right? It's competitive with ones that are done well. So if yours is 5 sentences and it's complex and it requires a lot of thought, I just don't need to read it.
On top of which,
that's the challenge.
Yeah. On top of which, to compound your challenge there, I just talked to a founder, been a YC 2 times, raised over $150 million each venture. They're on like BCD rounds.
Yeah.
And $300 million in revenue. And he was explaining what Y Combinator looks for and the investors he talked to, what they look for in pitch decks. And he said concise shows that the founder is confident and doesn't need all those words and sends that signal to the investor, wow, this is a founder worth it. And his advice literally is break it down into the one slide, the one statement, and then cut that statement in half. That's how concise you have to be. That's what we're talking about. So slides like this, I'm going to meander around. It's got words that I don't understand. We're just adding to this mix of problems that we've talked about. Let's see if we can keep digging here a little bit. Now we get into the vision. Founders do this quite a bit. They get right into vision. Will, what do you say to this?
No one cares about your vision. I know when people hear this, so it's like heresy. What do you mean no one cares about my vision? Let me be more specific. Of course, at a high level, people care about your vision. Okay. But this is a little bit different. I only care about the vision if I actually understand what the problem and solution are. For me to care about your vision, I need to understand specifically what the problem is and how you're solving it. If I don't understand that the problem is people can't find taxis and the solution is you've got an app that helps people find taxis, Uber, then only then can you tell me that you have a vision that you're going to transform transportation, et cetera, and maybe someday deliver food through this app, right? First, you need to convince me that the problem you're solving has merit and that it's a big market. Then you can go on to sell vision. You can't jump into vision until you've basically given me a cogent story that then supports that vision. Okay. Now, the tricky thing with a deck is the fact that 90% of the time, you're not there to present it. A lot of people don't think about that, right? 90% of the time, you're sending your deck there ahead of time and it's presenting without you because every investor is going to want to look at your deck before they see you. And if your deck is a jumbled mess that is only makes sense if you're there presenting it, well, most of the time, it's going to be viewed without you. And because nobody can make sense of it, you're never going to get a chance to actually present it, in which case it's kind of useless. So the deck has to be able to stand naked without you before you can get there.
And let me explain to you and everybody here, literally what would happen when I was on the side of being a general partner at a fund and we had to make decisions on writing checks. We talked a lot about vision slides and founders asked us, shouldn't I be visionary? I got to change the world. And we would say, yes, but like Will said, I looked for vision by the end. At the end of it, if you're going to put vision anywhere, for me, it worked the best just as an investor at the end when you said, if we solve this problem and execute the way that I believe we will, this is how the world changed. And then we're going to go on to world domination. And there's always that tension. I'm not saying founders shouldn't be visionary, but there's an appropriate time to present that. And we want you to be visionary and we want you to think big and take big swings and go for those moonshots. But if you can't tell me how you're going to execute in the short term in a very focused way, it's like the beachhead. If you're going to lose the Battle of Normandy, right there on the beach, then who cares about the rest of the war, the vision for the world, et cetera? You've already lost. And that's what, Will, I think you're talking about.
Yeah. I got to tell you that the challenge with pitch deck advice is there's just so much of it. There are a million ways to build a pitch deck. What Ed and I will talk about is one of them, right? People have raised literally trillions of dollars without our help. So there's no version where this is the only way to do it. What we talk about is one way to do it. And it may work for you. It may not. Take our advice and incorporate it into how you do it. Some people will tell you, tell a story, right? That's what you want to do. And so we'll see some pitch decks that are like telling this long narrative story that requires a long presentation, et cetera. Have people raised money doing that? Yes. Do I think it's a great way to do it? Not really. I think it's a license to meander, right? And I think it gets people in a lot of trouble. I'm kind of a get to the point kind of guy. I think that tends to work very well.
And I think you bring up a great point, Will, and I want to reiterate this. Often, a lot of our advice is based upon first-time founders, early founders. You might as well learn your scales, learn to mix colors using the primary colors and the color wheel, like just focus on RGB before you get into like 32 million different colors, et cetera. And we want you to master the basics before you get creative. After that, man, I've seen pitch decks and the founder is so sophisticated, so mature, they can go into stories and it works. And I go, great. You're probably one out of like 500 that I will meet that can pull that right out of the hat right in the beginning. Here, we want to go, just like Will said, to the lowest common denominator and share with you the basic advice that everybody can implement that you can have immediate short-term success with, set you up for success, not failure with like complicated techniques. That's where we're coming from.
You bet. And it just works. That's the point. I've never seen an investor say, wow, this wasn't nearly as complex as I needed it to be. Right? Or boy, I really wish they told a longer, more complex story.
Yes, we have that experience. Now, Will, what I did was I just took a look. I see that we went into like more problem or why now state of today. I think that this was an attempt at a solution. So let's backtrack a little bit and say, okay, let's say this was the solution statement. Okay. What would be your response, your feedback on this one?
Okay, let me dig in. Crates is an automated savings platform putting HSA savings on autopilot for an HSA eligible expense. User behavior, CVS, local gym, Amazon. Okay, got it. Crates platform integrations with cards and accounts, telehealth, AI powered Okay, right out of the gates, this slide requires a narrator. You have a lot of details here that an audience, the viewer, couldn't possibly fill in without someone explaining all of kind of the metadata that's required to understand what all those connections mean, okay? If the slide requires a narrator, the slide is broken, fundamentally. And that's what I just said a moment ago, where 90% of the time, the slide's going to have to stand naked, meaning someone's going to be viewing it, just like we are now, without you there to defend or present it, and that makes it a dangerous slide. Now, the one thing I do like is that at the top of the slide, this is vitally important, the author did attempt to create a single summary slide, a sentence rather, that defines what the slide intends to mean, right? However, we've got a graphic, a visual below it that doesn't have a lot of information for me to put the pieces together. If I don't know what that graphic is supposed to mean, I'm lost. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, it seems like you smashed a how it works slide with a solution slide together. That's where I'm going. I'm totally lost because, again, HSA, now I'm pretty financially savvy. I've worked in fintechs before, but this whole HSA thing, so I'm lost. I'm at a bit of disadvantage, but let's play this game. Will, you and I, we are the co-founders here of Crates. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to say, here's the problem. And you and I, we're brainstorming and we're like, oh, these are all the factors in our problem. And by the way, everyone, this is an easy fix in the sense that you can take all this data that you have on the slide, all your thoughts, send it to ChatGPT. I just had a founder send all his brainstorming, my brainstorming notes, and sent it to Perplexity. I used ChatGPT, and he came out with a problem statement. And you can say, give me a problem statement for an investor, for an early stage investor. This is my startup. Here's a pitch deck. I want it one sentence. I want it less than 30 words, etc. And you can even ask for a reaction. How would an investor react? Give me 3 options. What do you think is the best one based on the environment? But let's pretend, Will, that you and I, we are co-founders, and I'm like, okay, so you're in charge of the pitch deck. And I'm like, well, 35 million HSA account holders. And I give you all this data. And you kind of understand, we're just going to assume the solution is a solution. What would you do in terms of problem statement? Let's just wordsmith something.
Bet. Sure. First thing I'd say, Ed, is we're going to open up with who has the problem and how many dollars are at work. So I'm going to say for 35 million HSA account holders, we said billions of dollars. We're not going to use billions of dollars. We want the exact amount. Okay. So I'm going to say US, because I want to be specific. I want to say what market I'm in. If this is US, right?
Okay.
For US HSA account holders, there are 152, I'm making this number up, $152 billion in unrealized savings.
Right.
That could be applied toward X, Y, and Z that are not.
Yes. Perfect.
For 35 million US HSA account holders, there are $152 billion in unrealized savings that could be applied to X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z are 3 categories of benefits that would be badass that are not being applied.
Okay, so you've demonstrated what we tell all the founders. I like to say you want to put size, scope, severity. You want to talk and really define what those numbers are, what the pain is, what the cost is if you don't solve that problem. Walk us through, Will, those factors that you just went through. You just did the mental exercise and demonstrated those principles.
Yeah, can you go over to that slide? I may be kind of murdering their value proposition, but let's pretend I'm not for a second.
Sure.
Can you go to the slide that was the one that we said was complicated, the vision that kind of looked like a solution, right? I'm going to go to the left there where it says user behavior, CVS, local gym, Amazon. And I'm going to pretend for a second that maybe those sources are places where they could apply their savings account. I don't know if this is true, but this is why I don't actually understand their problem or solution. But if somehow those cost centers, and I'm assuming because it's CVS, local gym, Amazon, those are places that are health related, and somehow I'm assuming the money that's otherwise being put in a savings account could be applied under those categories. I would say for common expenditures like places at CVS or gym, or I'd probably be more specific to say prescriptions, exercise, or fitness, or whatever you'd consider Amazon to be for that category, could otherwise be expensed or saved. I would put those categories directly in the problem statement. Essentially, what I'm trying to tell an investor is like for 10% of what people spend every month, that could be directly deducted from their taxes, right? I would try to hard code that into the problem statement if that's really what I was trying to convey.
I want to just add to what Will said. We might have totally butchered it. Like this founder's out there, and I just realized the testimony on the front is not the founder. The founder, you might be out there going, you guys totally screwed it up. I can't believe you're doing this to my pitch deck. But you see, that's the problem. The fact that we even had to go there and do that is the issue that we are faced with. And so we're trying to make the best of it. You don't want to put your potential investor in that situation. That is a very bad idea. So we're just giving you the principles. So I'm going to say to this founder, we're going to send this founder feedback and say, watch this, go back. Everything falls down into problem, solution, market. If you are going to put all your upfront work and just get the feedback right out of the gate, I would rather have founders come to me and say, Ed, here's my problem, solution, and market, and not show me any of the rest of the deck. Just give me a black and white text-based deck and let me work with them so we can establish a foundation for the rest. We'll talk about problem, solution, market. Why are those slides the most important?
Yeah, well, look, this is exactly it. I mean, the fact that we're so dumbfounded we do this for a living is exactly it. The fact that we don't understand the problem, and for the viewers, because you just went through the same journey we did, the fact that we couldn't make it past the problem, let me ask you this. Does it matter who their competition is? Does it matter who their team is? Nope, because we don't even understand what problem it is. Exactly. The whole rest of the deck doesn't matter. The whole rest of the deck doesn't matter. We haven't looked at their financials. We haven't looked at the team, the traction. We haven't looked at anything because it doesn't matter. The rest of the deck is obsolete because we never figured out what their problem was. So we have no context for why any of it would matter. That's why the problem, solution, and market size are so critical to set up the rest of the deck, because it works in exactly this fashion. If I don't understand the problem, which you just saw how quickly that can happen, I can't see the value in the solution. If I don't see how the solution solves the problem, then I don't really care what size of a market you're in, because I don't understand why that solution is valuable. If I do understand why the solution is valuable, but I don't see why it's a big enough market that I would care, then I'm never going to invest in it no matter what the solution is anyway. If I really understand this problem, I'm like, oh, that's actually a pretty interesting problem, this healthcare savings account thing. And I'm like, hey, that actually would be a really valuable solution. And you're like, hey, by the way, that's 152 billion with a B problem. I'm like, whoa, that's a big problem in a really good solution area. Until I check those three boxes, first three slides of the deck, I am not interested. But once I check those three boxes, now I'm paying attention to the rest of those slides. Now you got me hooked. I may still not invest, but I can tell you, if I don't check those first three boxes, I don't care what's on the rest of the deck. I don't care who's on your team. If it's a problem I don't care about, right? So I got to check those three first. Those are the three most important slides. And that's not to say the rest of the slides aren't important. I'm saying those are the go, no-go slides. Got to figure those out first.
And one of the best compliments that you're going to get from an investor, and we see this, we have a service out here, and it's our fundable accelerator. And we basically help you with the pitch deck. We send it out, and I get to see what the investors say. I literally get to read the investor responses based on pitch decks. We work with the founder we created. And one of the most encouraging piece of feedback that I get is they'll say, you know what? You have a fantastic idea. We get it. It's just not in our space. We're not ready to go there. At least you've gotten through and communicated. That to me is a great signal. So just as long as the investor gets it, then at least you can help them make that decision on whether you're playing in the same ballpark or not. And they will be kind. They'll respond to you. But if you do hit that investor and they realize, wow, you've nailed it. This is exactly what we're looking for. We're in this space. Then you have such a better shot of nailing the rest of the pitch deck, even if it's not as much traction, it's not as good. If you can be clear on problem, solution, and you understand your market, wow, your life gets so much easier. All right. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna send that feedback to the next founder. I'm going to put up, we just had a pitch deck sent to us by chat. Remember, if you have questions on anything, use the Q&A box. We will prioritize those. But I just want to say, I appreciate this founder. Amar, I hope I'm not butchering your name. Amar with Mod Garden. You are agreeing that we are going to publicly take a look at your dev feedback, and this review is going to live forever on the YouTubes, on the internet. You know, everything lasts forever. Nothing is temporary. It is there. We're going to be super kind, super encouraging, because we want to reward your courage for doing this.
Yep.
All right, we got the go ahead. Okay, Will, here we
Let's do
go.
it.